All right. I'm sorry. Representative from Aniates PTO. Representative from Aniates SSC. Hey, good evening.
Is this the proper time period to address the site plan?
Sorry. I think this is our section, right? This is our section. Yes. And you
Okay.
have a, do you have a display anything or?
No, I'm not a
Okay.
not a
Look,
display.
just to make sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna. There are two parts to the site plan. One which is written and was distributed. Did you guys get a copy? And another part which could not be written yet, but I'll explain that later. I'll start with the part that's written. First, I need to acknowledge Ms. Eliason for her leadership for the whole SSC in writing the plan. I also need to acknowledge all of the teachers that really stepped up. I've never written a site plan before, and so they basically, in terms of doing all the research, writing the sections, really getting into the nitty-gritty, giving me all of the information as far as what academic data and testing data and financial data to request. Pretty much all of that came from them, so I have to publicly acknowledge them. Their names are listed in the report. The first part, the goal is that all students will be provided with high-quality instruction to meet the Common Core state standards. There's been a lot of talk about that, so we looked at 2013 adequate yearly report status, adequate yearly progress report, the STAR test results, the CELD results, and redesignation rates. We did find that we were not up to standard on the AYP results and some of the other measures. And one of the things that the Site Council would like to do is to perform more of a oversight role, meaning monitoring. Apparently, staff does do quite a bit of testing already. It's built in. But there's not as much monitoring and reporting on those specific things on a daily, monthly basis. Obviously, those are duties for the teachers, for the superintendent and the principal. One of the things that we'd like to do is get input first from the superintendent. We don't have a principal yet, but we will over the summer. Get direct input prior to the year on what they feel the academic data that we should be tracking is. Once they say what the academic data that we should be tracking, we want to set a date for the release of that academic data well in advance, say 3 to 6 months in advance. This is so that parents, teachers, staff members, high-level administrators are all on the same page. One of the things that structurally, and I'm not sorry for anything that I said last Friday, but it's unfortunate that it came out in a tense moment. If 1 or 2 people are responsible for academic data and other people interpret it to be release late problems, the only way to criticize the problem, because we're such a small district, is basically to criticize one person. If everyone's agreed upon what the data is, when it's going to be released, when we're going to review it, if there's a problem, it ends up being a group problem instead of 1 or 2 people's problems, which solves a lot of downfall in the aftermath. So we want to get away from being in situations where one person is responsible for things that really quite a lot of people have input into, because it causes a lot of problems. And then it's who said who did what, who let know. And that becomes negative. So we want to avoid that. Same thing with financial data, budget data. We want to have dates so that we have limited financial staff. So we want to let them know 3 to 6 months before we want to report what report we want, when we want it, why, who it's going to be. That way it's not a stressor. If they don't decide to wait to the last minute to do it, that's on them. but at least we've given them the fair notice. Also, we want those dates to be well in advance of things being due. So those due dates, and this is where we would get input. If it's better for staff to do it in December or January or February, but at the latest, we want those to come out by February. That way you have March and April to review them so that timely recommendations can be made to the board on each issue and so that everyone's included in the process. And so that's something that we have to meet with the superintendent, the principal, the budget, the staff members and say, what's best for you? This is what we need. And that'll cut out a lot of tension come the end of the year. And the same thing with academic data. The second one, we wanted to implement a school-wide intervention program for CCSS. We set out, this is prior to Superintendent Rubio being publicly named or really getting into the fold. It seems like he's already jumped on the ball. So these are one of those things where we have some ideas, but obviously we want his ideas. We just want to make sure that we know what those ideas are and that we're all putting energy into those ideas. So we anticipate making changes to this document. This document is a solid document that could be submitted, but we anticipate making a number of changes, particularly in the psychological area, in the discipline area, in the health and human spirit area, and adopting those probably at the first SSC meeting in September. So that will be a revised report. You know, we want to make sure that that gets done before the school year jumps off. If I go to the second page, let's see, developing a master schedule. This is a particular sticking point across quite a wide variety of teachers and even some students. Schedule at Anna Yates does determine a lot. So it is not an inconsequential, it's almost like a hidden instructor, right? So having schedules that teachers have a lot of input in, having schedules that allow specialty teachers like art teachers to know when certain age groups are coming into their classroom. For instance, if an art teacher doesn't know if every day of the month it's a different set of people coming in at a different time, it's kind of hard for them to prep for the day because she may not have prep time for all of those switches. But that's just one example, but that's something that I kind of found throughout. I think the teachers have stepped up and made some proposals in that area. I'm sure that there'll be some changes, but I would hope that the superintendent, the principal, and the teachers will be able to come together and come up with a scheduling philosophy because it's impossible to implement certain things if the scheduling is off. Grade level teams meeting regularly. I think that's something that's commonly done. Let's see, monitor CCS intervention. I'll go to the third page. All students will show constant growth academically, socially, demonstrating the ability to think critically, be kind, understand self-awareness, be successful, be aware of personal culture, and take personal responsibility. This is where we're looking at discipline data, suspensions, physical fitness, social, cultural, emotional health, and how all of those things fit together. There have been different initiatives. I don't know that parents as a group have ever been presented with the health initiatives. There are substantial health initiatives that individually or for particular students that have needs, and people are doing an excellent job. So I don't want to imply that a good job is not being done. But it's not, there's been no coordinated effort as you walk in the door to say, oh, okay, your kid has this particular issue. We actually have someone on staff that can maybe guide you through this issue. It would only be after you've been identified or maybe you've been active that you would find out. And so what we want to do is, and this goes for a lot of areas, we want to have a plan, a packet, a presentation for parents that gets presented in the beginning part of the year. We also want to utilize, parents really like the plays, the presentation, events where their kids perform something are very well attended, and parents are the most positive that as far as if I could measure when the best time when they're in the best mood about the school, right after their kid performs for Martin Luther King Day or Jesus Chavez, that's when they're in the best mood. And so that's probably a time you probably want to schedule more of those events throughout the years and pick a topic or two to present something to parents, because that's an opportunity to present the things that the school board, superintendent, it's an opportunity to get them in front and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and get out in front and create positive energy. So we want to say, okay, we want to do 2 or 3 of those events in the fall, 2 or 3 events in the spring, because you guys are doing things, but if parents don't hear about them, it does not create the positive energy, right? And as far as the discipline, I'm going to get into that in the second part, because that goes into some larger issues. We did have a request for the PE teacher here. I think that's been covered quite well documented. If we are not going to hire a PE teacher, one area of focus for the site council is that schoolyard. If, as a metaphor, if this board is where all of the staff and the board members, superintendent basically come together and commune, we don't really have a very big lunchroom or auditorium. That schoolyard is where all the kids commune. So if you're going to improve discipline, if we start with a new principal, and from the jump, you know, the kids who are troublemakers, they're going to be checking out the new sheriff in town. I mean, you know, kids that like to pop off, they're going to be, oh, new sheriff, well, let's see what this one's about, right? If we establish as a community, and I'm not talking about punishing kids, but I'm talking about establishing them, hey, this area, when you're out here, you're going to be where you're supposed to be. You're going to be doing something constructive, playing with your friends. Your language is going to be appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we are going to eliminate some areas where people can, you know, kids can go behind and either fight or play or kiss or whatever kids do behind doors. You know, they're locks that are inside the campus that are supposed to be locked, that they're not locked. There's all types of little things. Older kids like 6th to 8th grade, you know, skipping over the fence. If we can cut all of that stuff out and create order there, then that is going to spill over into the classrooms. It's going to spill over into the academic achievement that you guys are going to be expecting from Dr. Rubio and his new staff, okay? Because I would guess that 75% of the discipline, they may not get reported, they may happen in the classroom, but from what I understand, I think 75% of them initiate on that playground, right? 2 kids do something, they're pissed off about it at 12 o'clock, then by 1 o'clock, they're at it. You know what I'm saying? Now, when they're at it, they're in the classroom, but it all started on that. So there really needs to be a focus, really from everyone in the district, like how it's, because we're K through 8, how are we going to, not just in the morning, but all the way through up till about 1:30, maintain order on that yard. And if we do that, it's going to have a positive effect throughout the whole day experience and what everyone else is trying to accomplish. So,
excuse me, Mr. Gibb, before
yes.
you go on, I just want to let the board know it's been 8 minutes. Our timekeeper had to step out for a moment, so I just wanted to let the board know in terms of where we're with time.
Thank you. Let's see. Improve student engagement through leadership, shared decision-making, advocacy, and participation. So we are looking at the parent surveys that went out. One of the main focuses is communications. This kind of goes to communication. So School Loop has some functionality. There's other things. There's the posting on the website. I'm not so much interested in what functionality we own. I'm more interested in what functionality works on a day-to-day basis, right? So I don't have any evidence that the School Loop functionality, whatever is in there, really impacts a lot of things on a day-to-day basis. So what I'm looking to do is we've been looking at, and these things are fairly cheap, and they would even fit within our budget. I mean, $1,000 or so out of the school site council budget would probably pay for this technology because it's pretty cheap now. Notifications that you can opt in that are text notifications. Just being able to have instantaneous engagement. And once again, like as we do little things that don't necessarily constitute a ceremony at a board meeting, but that could go out in a text, like, you know, a play presentation. We had a lot of success on the football and soccer team. Like all of those little notices, you'd be surprised how much that will turn someone's opinion of a school. and turn their opinion of you when you come to talk to them about something serious. If you've given them a little notice, they have more patience with you. If they haven't heard from you, they have very little patience. So that's one of the things that we would like to do. Another thing is that, and I'm starting to understand like how this works. I completely understand why the board wants to maintain a collegial atmosphere within the board meetings in terms of the way people talk, the way they treat each other, et cetera. Prior to, I don't know if it's Dr. Sugiyama or not, but prior to Superintendent Sugiyama coming on board, you know, a number of people said, you know, Mr. Gibb, you're going to love him. You know, you're going to love his demeanor. You know, he just has his air about him. I mean, the minute you, and they're right. You know, I haven't really even had a one-on-one conversation. Like, it's a great experience. The problem is when you walk into school, like you don't feel like you're in a meeting with Dr. Sugiyama. You know, you feel like, what in the world's going on? And so what we really want is that same collegial behavior is, if that collegial behavior were on the school, then when people come here, they wouldn't be so frustrated. And now I'm starting to understand that one of the things is not so much public debate, but creating an atmosphere where little things can be presented side by side so that they don't build up until they're large things. And also, everyone having a seat at the table. The district's so small that, you know, it doesn't matter who you assign something to, hardly anything is secret. And so everything comes out in the wash. And so a lot of ceremony and time spent on those things isn't always well spent. But if everyone has a seat at the table and everyone contributes to documents, one thing, that'll stop a lot of conflicts, because if you have a responsibility for writing documents shared, meaning teachers, parents, staff, something like the LCAP, it's a lot harder to be critical if you have a shared responsibility for that document. And also if you have an atmosphere where you're giving the report, even if the board is making the final decision, it's just doesn't work having staff speak for parents, having parents speak for teachers. Everyone can speak for themselves. And it needs to be in an organized fashion, but there's a lot of reasons it doesn't work. It's not just that people intend to do wrong. It's just that literally it's impossible for me to speak for other parents. I can try, but it's impossible for me to understand where teachers come from. So it's just doing that would solve a lot of the back end things. Now I'm going to get to the part that we couldn't include in writing here, which is the comprehensive plan, safety plan, which is under the purview of the site council and was delegated to the planning committee. Our council did read all 96 pages, make comments, and have a meeting about it. We never got the final copy, so we could not do anything with it. We do have to make additions to it, not because there's something wrong with what's written, but we have to make specific, I made a commitment to lesbian, gay, transsexual, queer parents that there would be specific language, updated language included in that document. So that has to happen in the revised version. That's like a have to happen thing. Also, me personally, you know, I've got a kid on the campus, and so for me, a have to happen before the start of the school year is a specific evacuation plan, and also when that plan is going to be practiced by the staff. Also, where would the kids go? Where would parents pick up their kids if kids ever had to be evacuated from the campus for any reason? I'm not aware that parents have any idea. It doesn't matter if it's in the document hidden somewhere. It matters whether parents know where it is. The other thing is we need to buy supplies for earthquake. There needs to be actual earthquake kits. I know this issue has come up before and people have gone back and forth on whether we need them. It's the opinion of the site council that we need actual water, food, et cetera, for the kids purchased and on the Annie Yates campus. That's specifically in the state code on the state website, so we need to be in compliance. Like, those are the kinds of details that just used to like go through. But, you know, those are the kinds of details that, you know, you take care of those things, you announce to the parents, they're really going to appreciate that and going to feel like you're taking them serious. Those are things that have to be in there. The other thing is discipline. Now, discipline is not something that the site council would be meeting into or wanting to meet into in terms of deciding what would happen in a particular case. There is a committee, but in the past, basically, literally, the principal would just make the decision. The principal would also pick who was on the committee, so the committee would never really negatively review the process, and okay, so that just goes downhill. So what we want is definitely when we get the new principal, we'll meet with Superintendent Rubio, you know, get a grip on what their philosophy is approach to discipline. At Anna Yates, we need a different discipline plan, K through 4, than we need 5 through, because when my first grader says, I'm going to kill everyone in the room, I mean, doesn't really mean he's going to kill everyone in the room, and he has absolutely no capability to kill everyone in the room. That might mean a different thing if it's a 7th grader and they've brought a weapon to school previously and there's been issues of throwing desks. It might mean a different thing. We might have to take it a little differently. So we kind of need that on how we're going to do that, and also how we're going to bring parents into the deal. For the younger kids, you know, we want as little as possible suspensions, but we do want parents to take responsibility for if their kid's having an issue, and there could be a number of reasons. We want to, how are we engaging parents and taking responsibility and helping the teacher? Because we'd like to be much more lenient with the children if the parents are going to help us. If the parents say, hey, you know, it's all your problem, then we're going to do the best we can, but there's only so much we can do because they're not our kid. But if you're going to come in and say, I'm going to help you, definitely. Also, I have spoken with the rec center, and so the problem cases on our campus, they roll over into the rec center, and legally we're responsible until they get home. So even though they're at the rec, we're still responsible for those kids' behavior. If you, I mean, you can get your lawyers and get into it, but you can just take it from me. We are. And the rec has expressed the same frustrations parents have with the way discipline's been handled. And literally, they said to me, yeah, when we get the new principal, the first thing we're going to do is sit down and meet. So we want to coordinate that also with the parents, because problems that start at the rec also come back to school the next day. So we want to have that communication open. So those are things that are really important that I think are going to help everybody. And it's just going to create a better environment if we can get out in front of them, get a plan for how to deal with them. Also, there should be a confidential discipline committee. There is sort of a committee, but it's not really a committee. But this one, we want the teachers to choose whoever they want to be, have a representative. Certainly, if the principal should be on it, and the principal wants to appoint someone else to be on it, they should have that. Also, there should be a parent on there. That should be confidential. But that should be where real serious issues are discussed in terms of if there's any patterns emerge, that's where those should be discussed. And then probably the results of those should not be issued in a public meeting, but they should have the opportunity to speak to the superintendent, to the board privately to say, hey, look, this is serious. We got to step in. And I think if we had that, it just would change everything for everybody. And then then we could spend our energy focusing in on raising money and the school. The last thing that I wanted to say, the Emory Ed Fund, no one knows how it works, okay? I'm not saying they're doing bad things. I'm just saying nobody knows how it works, okay? And so people will not ask anybody to make donations, particularly large, sizable donations that we need until they understand where the money's going to go. I personally would like an annual report given directly to the site council where people can come and ask questions once a year. I would like a quarterly report, which is much shorter. It could be as short as an email, answer a few questions, just letting us know what happened that quarter. It could be good, like we lost a donor, or it could be great, like we gained a donor, or we have an opportunity. Just so there's some back and forth. And that's to build up confidence in the Ed Fund so that then parents, teachers, et cetera, feel confident going out, asking people to raise money, and just going about it that way. And if there are changes or whatever that need to be made, that would be the way to go. And lastly, like LCAP meetings, those should be scheduled in advance. SSC meetings will be published. The SSC election, there's quite a lot of leeway in our bylaws right now with the chairman. I'd actually like there to be less leeway in terms of like making decisions. But Mr. Affeld, when he was there, you know, he did increase the level of documentation by creating bylaws. I'd like to make those bylaws a little firmer. So I'd like elections every 2 years. I'd like officers to have 2-year terms. Right now, we have the SSC is about 40–50% full, so if we had an election, I would like to have one probably late October, early November. I'd like teachers to be notified. I'd like help from the superintendent, getting teachers getting that up to the full 5. That way we have 5 on, 5 off. So spots open up. You know, I do think the 2-year officer term would be good so that the officers can accomplish something. But there should be an opportunity for new voices. You know, we're a transient campus, so that SSC shouldn't be 1 or 2 people for 10 years. You know, it should be a revolving door, because the campus needs it, because, you know, we change every 2–3 years, right? So that it just doesn't work if just 1 or 2 people dominate that thing. So unless someone has a real objection, you know, I'll work with that, submit that, whatever the process is to submit those bylaws. We vote on and submit it to you. But we want those elections to be public announced. We want an effort to be put in to get both parents and teachers on the board. And coordination with ESS. And I got 2 minutes and I'll finish up. The last thing is to address the board on what I feel is the gulf between the typical parents and the board. Board has these statutory limitations on, you know, you can't just, like, there's a lot of things I want to email you guys about, but I know that past a certain point, it's like I'm influencing the board, right? I'm kind of like, I know you, I'm sending you emails. If I go into too much detail too often, it's kind of like, what are you trying to do? So you got to avoid that, right? And you guys are doing a good job trying to follow the rules. On the other hand, the parents and what we have right now, they don't understand how you work. They also don't understand how to reach out to you, or how when they come to speak, how that ends up working its way. You did take some actions that have been long wanted in terms of the English language learners, and you just have my word, I'll make sure that that gets distributed, and I make sure that those things that the superintendent that you're doing get emphasized in terms of the positive things that you've done in the last couple of days, or you're going to do tonight or next week. But we got to get better in that, because I don't know that any parents feel that you listen to them. I know you do listen to them. I just don't have any parents saying to me, the board listens to us, right? They know Mr. Affeld's saying some things, but that's kind of the only person they know. Even an event where 2 of you working with a superintendent, maybe one in the spring, one in the fall, where you're not in the board, maybe we have an event where they're going to be parents, but we identify a few parent leaders and make sure they're going to come, and we get 2 of you, and you have a chance to just come and just talk and just kind of like politic. Like, I mean, I don't know which one of your seats are open, who's running for re-election, but just imagine you're running for re-election, and you just chit-chat and you talk and whatever informally. We just got to get back to that so that we can kind of build momentum, because there's only so much I can do. And just the process of coming here and speak, it's just because our district is so small, for whatever reason, when parents come here, it is not leading to the experience that's productive. But I hope you're taking that, I hope you take it in the right way. But it's a serious problem, and I'm trying to meet it out as best I can. But I think we'll get there, but we just got to be a little bit more deliberate about that. Any questions at all?
I don't have a question. I just have a couple comments. One, I'd like to just appreciate everything that you just said. That was, I'm sure, a very short synopsis of all of the time and energy that you've put into our school district, and I find that really impressive, and I appreciate that. Just a quick note on the discipline plan that you want to have a conversation with. I would really encourage you, and you probably already thought about this, but to include the wellness folk in that when you decide to make a discipline plan for the district. They are going to be a huge asset
Definitely. I'm waiting on their report. So when they give me their final report, then they will be engaged directly. I actually don't plan on writing the report. There's some additions that, for instance, I could look at like the pickup and back in the front. Teachers want police in the back of the front for a lot of reasons. A parking policy, the cameras on the campus don't work. Plan for recess, like there should be a minimum of 4 fire drills. They don't happen. Fire drills do happen, but there's not 4 that happen every year. Like those are like, I'm not going to bore you with all those things, but all those are little details. And so we will work with them. And it's not that we're taking over. It's more like, hey, you did good. This is where we need to,
Yeah.
and then we're going to hand it off to them to implement.
I think where my light bulbs went off was specifically when you were talking about the yard
Mhm.
and issues that happen either before school or during lunch or even after school or at the rec center. The school nurse, the school psych,
Mhm.
and all of those interns in Juliet, everybody who's in that wellness center will be able to influence those conversations and steps
Mhm.
in ways that other people won't be able to. Just
Okay.
like the principal will have things to bring to the table that wellness won't be able to. I just think that they would be a huge asset for you to use in that planning conversation.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's noted. But yeah, I've had good conversations with Ms. Dunn
Excellent.
and others. I haven't had time, honestly, to have
Yeah, you've been
I was reached out to. I have to say, last week that the psychologist and one of the teachers met to write an additional section to the S for this plan. But I didn't have the time to meet with them. But I told them, hey, we'll put it in the revision in the fall.
Yeah, and that when we have our Annie Yates principal and we discuss a specific, kind of our vision of how we want to approach discipline as a district, they're going to be great, just like everybody else is. So you're already ahead of me. Thanks.
No, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everyone's patience. With my temperament. And also the last thing is, not just development for the teachers, but also development for the staff. Throughout this process, whenever I quote someone will say, well, this person has this issue. I mean, to my knowledge, everyone in this district has at least one issue, right? I mean, certainly I have an issue. Certainly the teachers have an issue. So what I try to do is not eliminate what people had to say because they have a particular issue. So even if I raise the issue, it may seem like, oh, he's done with that person. That's not the way I look at it. If it's an issue that's causing a problem, I'm like, in this particular case, it's causing me a problem. But one thing that we've failed to do, both for the staff and for the teachers, is we are not developing the younger people so that they can end up where Mr. Sugiyama is, we just haven't. And so that goes for the staff that's here in the office, and that goes for we have a responsibility as people teaching, because they're going to lose engagement for our campus. And it's not necessarily in the plan, but I want to make sure that we identify if teachers want to become master teachers, that we're getting them the mentoring that they need. If they want to be administrators, if administrators are already administrators, but they have aspirations of being superintendents or getting higher up, going someplace else into a bigger time if there's not a space. Like, we have to make sure, because that's also part of having a healthy campus, is letting people know, as we're asking them to give all this time, that, hey, we're going to make sure we're preparing you to look good, and so that you can make more money, do whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I did not have the time to even really get into that, but if all this stuff is to bed by the fall, that is something that the Site Council would like to work and to work in. Because I think if people knew that, hey, I know what my next step is in a year or two, that's also going to make them more relaxed and more positive when they're on the campus, right? Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, Mr. Gibbs, very good presentation. I like all of your suggestions. The thing that I would ask though is that if the board can get announcements when you have the SSC meetings, because I had not received any all year. I do receive the PTO meetings
Okay.
via email, but I have not received anything from the SSC, so that would be much appreciative. I don't have a problem at all coming to an SSC meeting, Only thing you have to do is just invite me. I'll be willing to come talk to parents and
Mhm.
answer any questions that they may have.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make it happen. We're going to take responsibility for communication, and we do submit them to the board, but the problem is just structural. There's not a central place where, you put something in and it pops out to everybody. That's a real, but we want that to happen because a lot of people don't know about your meet. They don't, just like you don't know that, like people don't know what you're doing. So one of the things, once we get rid of these safety issues that are the first concern, that the right next issue is the development piece, which Dr. Rubio seems like he's all on board. So I'm just really going to try and find out what he's doing and just support it. And then what you just said, letting people know if you're going to come, letting people know you're going to come. So we'll get a few extra parents there, because if you're coming, I want to go to every parent. I want to maximize your presence, and I want to know. I want to prep you for what the issues are so you have answers so that you don't get caught off guard. I mean, just all of those little things, but that'll make a big difference, and I appreciate you making that. That's the things that they just haven't been happening, and so we just want to be able to make that happen. Yeah.
He's right. You can find him, huh? Any other comments, questions?
President Dice, if I may. Now, Mr. Gibb and I have not had the opportunity to speak, and I can understand that generally no one wants to talk to a short timer. So it's always better to talk to the person who's going to be in charge. But I do appreciate Mr. Gibb's comments. I can tell you from my experience that in most districts, maybe I should say many districts, the school site council is often treated as a rubber stamp. If the administration writes the plan and they bring it to the site council and say, here's what we want to do, we want you to approve it, and so forth. But school site councils should not be rubber stamps. They should be very involved in helping to develop the kind of plans that drive where the school is to go. And I think that many of the things that Mr. Gibb brought up are exactly the kinds of things we want our site councils to chew on. And I've always felt, at least in my previous tenure here, that because we're small, we have a unique opportunity to work even more closely with school site councils at both our schools than, say, in a district that has 20 different schools, which logistically makes it a little more challenging. So there is that opportunity moving forward. I think also that the one thing I want to mention about the plan, because I did have a chance to look at the school plan, and I think there's strong alignment with where the LCAP is going. But this year, as I talked to the State Department as recently as today, they've indicated that, this year was a tough year because of the transition to LCAP in terms of coordinating the timing between the board's approval of school plans and the approval of the LCAP. And I can tell you, just not to belabor this point, but in my previous district before I retired, when I was in Dublin for 10 years, we always had the principals work with the site council to develop the site plan in the spring of each year. And we brought it to the board before June 30th. That's before we had LCAP. But inevitably, the school site had to revise the plan in the fall because in more years than not, we didn't know what the state budget was. The budget changed. The district's ending fund balance may have provided additional funding that could be allocated to schools. So there are all these variables that basically required all the schools to revise their site plan in the fall. And so when I was in Dublin, the principal said to me, why are you making us do this twice? It's like we're doing it in the spring, and then again, you're telling us we've got to revise our plans in the fall. So in Dublin, as with many districts, they switched their site plan approval cycle from a fall to a fall cycle. And the other factor was we never got the state assessment results until August. So what happens is schools are developing plans in the spring using a data that's over a year old. So a lot of districts switched the October cycle. In fact, in my conversation with state division director today, I said, moving forward, you guys are going to have to work out the timing better so that you're not causing districts to do double work in terms of the sequence, because LCAP statutorily has to be adopted by June 30th, but there is no statutory timeline for when site plans have to be adopted except on an annual basis. So when Mr. Gibb is saying, well, there's some pieces of information we need, and that'll cause us and help us to revise our plan in the early fall. I think it's really, in some ways, timely that the site plans for the both schools hopefully will be brought to the board sometime in the early fall for approval, because at that point the board and the schools will have a better idea of what their actual budget allocations are. Right now it's always just a best estimate. Once schools really know what that amount is, then they can really kind of finalize their plan in more detail. So appreciate the areas that he brought up. I think those are the key areas. I think particularly like the focus and use of data to drive instruction, the whole issue of intervention programs to help students who are not meeting standard to improve. I think those are ongoing challenges, but it's exactly the kind of areas that we want school site councils to engage in and to help the district with. So thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, Owen. And I didn't want to jump in with Miss Augustine, only because there are people that knew her better. But 2 years ago, you know, Mother's Day in Dean's kindergarten year, his babysitter, he was born in Las Vegas, his babysitter called and she was wishing Aisha a happy birthday. I mean, happy Mother's Day, my wife. And we're like, oh yeah, we don't live in Las Vegas anymore, because she had been his first teacher in preschool, and she was more than a babysitter. She had been his first teacher. And she said, where do you live? And I said, well, we live in Emeryville. And she's like, well, I grew up in Emeryville. I said, where'd you go to school? She's like, oh, I went to Annie Yates. So there's a good chance that my son's first teacher was probably taught, you know, by Miss Augustine. So at some point, Kim Flowers, I don't know if you know her, I don't know if that was her last name when she was here, but so, you know, thank you to Miss Augustine for whatever she did, because his first teacher, she was a great first teacher. Yeah.
One last thing, I really like also the suggestion on rotating members on the SSC. And, you know, right now I see a very dedicated, you know, parent to
Mr. Nguyen, could you speak into the microphone, please?
I see a very dedicated parent out in the audience. And Mr. Donahue, I would look forward to seeing you on the SSC as a parent on the committee one day, coming up here giving us some, you know, recommendations like you always do. So that rotation, I think, will really work well. And you got to recruit out there. We need to recruit.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I just want to also thank Mr. Gibb for his presentation, and glad that I think was the first person to inform him what the SSC was, or there was such a thing, and recommend that he get involved, and he really carried the ball from there. And I look forward to continued work on that. And I really appreciate Dr. Sugiyama's comments, because I think that they're exactly right, that I think this is sort of working out well, in that before we're adopting the LCAP for the year, we ought to have a sense from the SSC of what their, you know, goals and recommended actions are, but that the timing of you know, figuring out the site plan needs to be coordinated with the timing of developing the LCAP, and I think the site plan should happen first, and then the LCAP kind of spread out from there. But those two processes need to be integrated, and in fact, Public Advocates is sponsoring a bill in the legislature to do just that, and kind of tighten that integration a little bit more. And you know, it's probably going to make it out of the legislature. It's going to be a question whether the administration wants to adopt it. But in any event, whatever happens in Sacramento, we can do whatever we want here, and we can do a good job of it. Finally, your point about the elections, I think, is key. Site Council needs help from staff to sort of, you know, communicate to the parents and communicate to the teachers that these elections need to happen and make it happen. And the sort of parents on the Site Council can't run the election by themselves. They're certainly willing to help staff it. So, Dr. Rubio, hope in the fall we can, when we get the new principal on, make sure that they get that support on both sides. Great, thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Well, I just wanted to appreciate and I think so much the experiences and effort this year will only help and support, next year and the years to come because of, as you've mentioned, and we know for sure, there's been so many transitions. But I think this is much more, this is further along than we probably would have been for sure, for certain. But I think it definitely informs our next steps. So I just wanted to appreciate that effort and
Yeah,
that work
there's-
has been tremendous.
Thank you. You know, there's so many areas. You know, like even with the teacher absence, you know, like I said, one of the things that in the site council we like to do is a perfect example is as oversight. A lot of times you say oversight, people think you're going to come in, you're going to be punishing people or looking at. Like, I'm not really. It's just that whole process is just really a drag. It's not something I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is, like, for instance, if a teacher, and this is something we'll sit down with the superintendent, if the teacher is out of a classroom for more than 4 days a month, you know, flagging that classroom as a community, saying we just got to make sure that we have some coverage there, that the homework's there, you know what I mean, that everything's going okay, that it's not just revolving different sub every day, like all of those little details.
Yeah.
That's just where we want to move to more. The site council should be an oversight, and I think that's what we're designed to be. Is just, hey, things seem to be going off the track a little bit. Can we make sure this doesn't go too far off the track? That's where we kind of want to move. We're not trying to move into being a police organization. We're more moving into, like, can we just be a preventative organization?
And like Dr. Sugiyama, no need for a rubber stamp. So that's.
Well,
I
you know
think
you won't
that's
get
the
that
right
from me,
thing.
so I
We're
don't do
going
rubber
in the right-
stamps.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation this evening, and we look forward to our next report.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.